It was a Tuesday that smelled like bad coffee and fluorescent light and the quiet, grinding anonymity of being no one. That's how I would have described myself. No one. Just another body in a campus of 30,000, drifting between the library and a cramped studio apartment. I didn't go to parties. I didn't raise my hand in class. I didn't even like being looked at. If I could have moved through the world as a shadow, I would have chosen it. That's why the envelope made no sense. It was tucked inside my copy of Advanced Macroeconomics. I hadn't opened that book in 3 days, but there it was, heavy cream paper, the kind that felt expensive even before you touched it, the kind that whispered old money and locked runes. It smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something metallic, like the air before a storm or the inside of a wound. There was no name on the front, just a wax seal in the shape of a key. I stood at the library table for a long moment, turning the envelope over in my hands, looking around. The fluorescent lights hummed, indifferent. Nobody was watching me. Nobody ever watched me. I broke the seal. The card inside was simple, elegant even, just a few lines of handwritten cursive. The Sigma Omega House, midnight, come alone. And beneath it, a postscript, 4 lines that turned the blood in my veins to slush.
We know you still keep the blue marble in your pocket. It's okay to let go, Lana.
I stopped breathing. I reached into my jacket pocket, and there it was, cool, smooth glass beneath my fingertips. The blue marble had lived in that pocket for 10 years. I had never told anyone about it. The marble was my secret, my only one. My hands were shaking. I looked around the library again, slower this time. Really looked. Everything's normal. Everything's wrong, because someone had been close enough to know. Someone had seen into a room inside me that had no door. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but when it's wrapped around the feeling of being seen for the first time in years, it stops being curiosity. It becomes a hunger. I turned the card over. GPS coordinates, written in that same careful cursive. I followed them. The path took me far from campus, into a wooded stretch. The coordinates led me to a gate almost buried in ivy, and beyond it, a Victorian manor. No cars in the driveway, no noise, just one golden light flickering in a second-story window, steady as a heartbeat. I stepped onto the porch. The wood didn't creak. I reached for the iron knocker. The door opened before I touched it. A girl stood in the frame. Floor-length black dress, hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. She wasn't smiling. She already knew my name.
Hello, Lana.
Her voice had a quality to it, like it was traveling a great distance to reach the air between us. She stepped aside. Behind her, the foyer was dark. Not dark the way rooms are dark when the lights are off. Dark the way places are dark when light has decided not to visit. I stepped inside. As I passed, I noticed she wasn't looking at my face. Her eyes were fixed on one specific point, the pocket, the left jacket pocket, right where the marble was.
Go to the basement. The others are already discussing the lake.
I froze. My brother didn't die in a hospital. He died in a lake. A small, nameless lake in another state entirely, 400 miles from here. There was no obituary that mentioned it, no news story. I turned around to ask, but the front door was gone. Not closed, gone. Where it had stood, there was now only a seamless wall of dark wood. And then, from somewhere at the top of the stairs, drifting down through the dark like smoke, A voice. I knew that voice.
Lana, is that you? Did you bring it?
I ran up those stairs faster than I had run anywhere in years. By the time I reached the landing, the hallway stretched empty. My hand was clamped around the marble. It had sounded exactly like Danny, but Danny had been gone for a decade, and the lake had taken him, and the police had never found enough of him to bury. I shouldn't have come. The air in the foyer was changing. It didn't smell like old cedar anymore. It smelled like damp earth and stagnant, mossy water. I looked at the portraits lining the dark hallway. In the dim light, I noticed one of the frames was slightly crooked. Inside was a photo of a girl who looked exactly like me, wearing a sweater I had lost 3 years ago. I reached the landing, my heart thumping against my ribs. A girl moved toward me down the hall. She was tall, with sharp features and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a silk robe with Sigma Omega stitched in silver thread.
I'm Jess, the social chair. You're late for the initiation, Lana.
How do you know my name? And how did you do that with the door?
We're very thorough with our recruitment. We don't just look at grades. We look at the things people try to bury. It makes for a much tighter sisterhood.
She began walking toward the end of the hall, gesturing for me to follow. 2 other girls, Sarah and Beth, appeared from a side room. They just fell in line behind me, effectively sandwiching me between them. We were just talking about the summer of 2016, the day of the picnic at Blackwood Lake. It was 84 degrees. You were wearing those yellow flip-flops with the broken strap. I stopped dead. I had thrown those shoes into a dumpster on the way home from the hospital that night. How could you possibly know that? Because, Lana, we don't just know what you wore. We know what you didn't do. We know you heard him splash, and we know you waited 42 seconds before you started screaming. Now, let's go to the basement. The others have already started the water test, and they saved a seat just for you. From behind the basement door, I heard the sound of a heavy body hitting water, followed by a muffled, bubbling scream that was cut off sharply. The silence that followed had the quality of a sentence being passed.
Watch your step, Lana. The tiles stay slick this time of year.
The stairs were made of cold concrete. As we descended, the light from the hallway faded, replaced by the flickering glow of tea lights floating in a massive tiled pool that took up most of the floor. The water was dark, so dark it looked like a hole cut into the earth. In the center of the pool, a girl was treading water, her eyes wide with terror. I recognized her from my biochem lecture. Her name was Chloe. Why is she in there? Let her out.
She's just finishing her intake.
Jess held a small silver tray. On it was a single object, a wet, rotted sneaker, a child's sneaker. My heart stopped. It was a left-foot Converse, size 6, the same one Danny had been wearing when he slipped. We found it, Lana. We found it exactly where you said it would be. In the place you told the police you never went.
I never told anyone.
Chloe is struggling because she's still trying to hide who she is. In this house, your secrets are like lead in your lungs. The only way to stay afloat is to give that weight to the water. She tried to keep her little lies, and now they're dragging her to the bottom. I watched in horror as Chloe's head dipped below the surface. A single, silent bubble rose where she had been. Now let's see how heavy that marble makes you feel. The hand came out of the water without warning. Panic broke through every wall I had. An arm, a shoulder, a face beginning to break the surface. It wasn't Chloe. It was a boy. The gray hand clamped around my ankle. The world tilted. I fell feet first into the cold dark. I braced for the splash. It never came. Falling but not getting wet. Falling through the water, through the cold, through the black. My feet hit something solid. I opened my eyes. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was standing in the middle of my childhood bedroom, but the walls were made of glass, and on the other side of the glass, pressing in from every direction, slow and enormous and patient, thousands of gallons of dark lake water. Things moved in it, shapes too large to name, circling. Behind me, the bedroom door opened.
Welcome home, sister.
I turned slowly. A girl stood in the doorway I didn't recognize, maybe 19. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 messy braids. She wore a vintage Sigma Omega sweater and a name tag pinned slightly crooked. Mia.
Welcome home, sister.
This isn't my home. This is a hallucination. I'm drowning in that pool, aren't I?
You're not drowning, Lana. You're being preserved. The house doesn't want your body. It never wanted your body.
She walked toward my old desk. She picked up a framed photograph that had no right to be there. It was me and Danny, taken the morning of the picnic. I was grinning. Danny wasn't smiling. Danny was pointing at something behind the camera. I had never seen this photograph before.
The marble isn't just glass, is it? You didn't just find it. You took it from him. While he was reaching for the shore, you reached for the light catching that blue glass in his hand, and you took it.
The room swirled. Not physically, internally. A treasure, he'd said. I wanted, I said. A struggle. A splash. And then 42 seconds of silence while I stood there with the marble in my fist, watching the water close back over the place where he'd been. I had counted them. I had been counting them every day for 10 years. She was closer now. I could see her braids weren't hair. They were woven from dark, dripping lakeweed.
We all have a treasure. Jess took a locket. Sarah took a ring. I took a secret that tasted like salt.
What happens if the glass breaks?
Then the truth comes in, and the house finally gets to see what's inside the marble.
A series of sharp pops. A fissure had opened near the ceiling. A thin stream of freezing lake water pushed through it. The smell of Blackwood Lake filled the room.
You have to choose, Lana. Do you join the sisterhood and keep the room dry? Give the marble to the house, or do you let the lake have its treasure back? The house can make it stop. You don't feel it anymore. You don't dream it anymore. You just live.
For a moment, I wanted it. I wanted to open my fist and let the marble drop and feel nothing. Then I looked at the photograph. Danny, pointing. At the glass wall, a pale hand pressed flat against the pane. Not Danny's hand, an adult woman's hand. Her face came forward out of the dark. Her mouth was moving.
Lana, give it back. She's coming for all of us. If you give it to the house, it'll...
The glass shattered. The lake came in. The sound was a long, wet sigh. You can't scream when the air is replaced by something as heavy as grief. The water rises, slowly. The water came in through the window first, pouring over the sill. It hit the floor and spread, calm and certain. I stood there and watched it come for me. I expected to die. Instead, the water carried me. It lifted me gently and pulled me out through the bedroom door, down long hallway, and deposited me into a ballroom, vast and submerged and perfectly, utterly still. The floor beneath me was black marble. I could stand. The current held me upright. The water was not trying to drown me. It was presenting me with something. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw the walls. They weren't wood or plaster. They were set with thousands of small white objects. Teeth. Human teeth. A mosaic of mouths. A gallery of every secret that had ever been swallowed instead of spoken. Jess was standing on a dais at the far end of the ballroom. The platform she stood on was perfectly, inexplicably dry. Sarah and Beth flanked her, holding a leather-bound ledger. "You're a fast learner, Lana. Most girls fight the water, but you've been underwater for years. You just didn't know how to breathe it yet." "What is this place?" "This is where things go when people decide they don't want to remember them anymore." Sarah and Beth opened the ledger. On the open page was a hand-drawn map, Blackwood Lake, and there, in the center of the deepest part, an X. Pinned to the map was a lock of hair, brown. Fine. My throat closed. "We didn't just invite you to join us, Lana. We invited you to return what was borrowed. The marble isn't the treasure, it's the anchor." My hand moved to my pocket, but it wasn't glass. It was soft and wet and warm. I pulled my hand out of my pocket. It wasn't a marble. It was a human eye, blue. It sat in my palm, and it looked at me. My stomach turned to ice. "The house needs a witness, Lana. Danny has been waiting a long time for you to see things from his perspective." Behind me, a door had appeared. Something creaked. I turned. A figure stood in the frame, dripping, still, holding a single sneaker.
Lana, it's time for the final rule.
He stepped into the light. He didn't have a face. Where his features should have been, there was nothing. A smooth, pale, wet surface, except for my own reflection. I stared back at myself from the place where my brother's face should have been. Terrified, small, guilty. The eye in my hand blinked.
The final rule is simple, Lana. You don't get to keep the treasure and the memory. One of them has to stay in the water.
The Sigma Omega sisters are not simply students, Lana. We are the things people tried to forget. We are the lockets thrown into rivers, the letters torn and burned.
Give him the eye. Give him back the perspective you stole when you let him sink. If you do, the room stays dry. You walk out that front door and back into the ordinary, comfortable, beautifully forgettable life you've been building.
And if I don't?
Then you become the anchor.
I looked at the faceless thing wearing the shape of my brother. Without a mouth, it couldn't ask me why. I had been telling myself a story for a decade, but the house knew. The house was built from exactly this kind of material. I closed my fist around the eye. The pulse of it against my palm was warm and insistent. "I'm sorry, Danny. Giving it back wouldn't give him back. It would simply move the debt, and the house would still hold the receipt." I pressed the eye into my own face, into the socket I hadn't known was empty. It fit the way keys fit locks. The world went silent. The water vanished. The teeth dissolved. The ballroom unbuilt itself until there was nothing around me but gray mist. I was standing on a porch, the Victorian Manners porch. The front door stood open behind me. The Greek row curved away in front of me in the pearl gray light of the earliest morning. Ordinary, irreversibly ordinary. I reached into my pocket. It was empty. The marble was gone. I started walking. A puddle caught me first, mirroring the pale sky. In the puddle, my left eye looked back at me, brown as it had always been, but my right eye was blue. The blue of shallow water and winter sky. The blue of a clarity that comes only from seeing something for long enough that you stop being able to look away. I am a member now. I was halfway past the library when I saw her, a freshman, sitting on a bench crying quietly. I knew her before I reached her. I knew her name. I knew the particular shape of what she was hiding. I felt the envelope materialize in my hand. Heavy cream paper, no name on the outside. I stopped in front of the bench. She looked up. Her eyes found the envelope, then mine. I know what you're carrying. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I held out the envelope and she took it. I walked away and didn't look back. The blue marble was gone from my pocket, but Blackwood Lake kept it now, and in exchange, I kept what the lake had given me, a different kind of sight, a different kind of knowing. The house had waited 10 years for me to stop fighting the water, and now I knew exactly who to invite next.